Hello everyone, Nathan here, and we are going to take a look at some rigging and constraints and cool things like that we can do with animations in Blender. So I'm just going to go ahead and just using a default scene here, deleted everything, and we are going to, let's just go ahead and add a circle mesh. We're going to do that. Just say 12, sure, why not? Fill the ends. You know what? That's not what I wanted. I wanted a cylinder. That's better. Okay, so we'll put 12 vertices. The radius is fine. Depth, let's put 0.1. That looks good. Okay, so basically this is going to be a train wheel. Because who doesn't want to make train wheels, you know? We're going to go ahead and rotate that so we have something standing that way. So we have one wheel here, and you know, let's go ahead and make another wheel, just so we have two wheels. I think that's good. And then we're gonna make a, actually let's use a cube. We're gonna make a drive shaft to connect the two. So we're just gonna scale that down to 0.1, which gives us a little square thing here. We'll pull that off. Change to wireframe with Z, control and slide that over. I think this needs to be taller though, so let's go ahead and pull the upper faces up one and the lower faces down one, and let's just pull this out. So it pretty much runs the length of the wheels. Now that should sit, say up about there. So as the wheels spin around, this should move up and down. Now we should also have another one of these, which we're going to put overlapping just a little bit. And this should go up to the doodad up at the front of the train. So we're just going to use this to represent, is that a doodad? I have no idea what they actually call that thing. But you have the piston that runs in and out of it. And actually let's make that way narrower. Put that to there. And pull that into about here. Alright, so the wheels need to rotate. This thing needs to just run in a circle with them. And this piston needs to run on the wheel, but needs to pivot at this point, but still go back and forth. Simple enough, right? Simple enough. Actually, it is pretty simple, but it can be confusing. So, and I know this is like the worst thing to start with. We're going to go ahead and just add an arrow here. And let's pull this up and actually name everything. Naming things is good. Helps you memorize, or helps you tell what they are. Front, wheel, and we're going to call this one rear wheel. And it actually would have made more sense to do wheel front and wheel rear, but whatever. I'm just going to call this a steam box, because I don't know what it's really called. We're going to call this drive shaft. And we're going to call this link belt. Link shaft, I guess, because it's technically not a belt. Alright, so we have this empty, which we're just going to call empty. And we're going to use this empty to actually control both wheels spinning around. Now, do we really need to have the wheels spin in Minetest? I mean, they'd be fine without. But hey, if you can do it, why not, right? It only adds more, data that has to be stored. But whatever, I digress. We're going to go ahead and add a rotation, hitting the I key to pull up the menu here, and then just selecting rotation, and that is on our empties. And we're going to go ahead to frame 100, and I'm going to rotate that 360 degrees, and insert a rotation. So now that spins around negatively, which would be for the train going forwards. I'm going to go ahead and set our end frame to 100 right away. And now if we play with Alt A, it just spins in a circle. But you'll notice it starts and stops here and kind of picks up speed and slows down. On mechanical things that are going to be looping animation, you don't want that. On most things, you don't want that if it's going to be looping, because it just looks silly. So if we change to animation and make sure we're selecting that, which we are, we'll just click and drag the little corner thing there to make this our full chunk here. And period on the numpad will actually fit everything in the window. And if we open up rotation and click Y on Euler rotation, click the T key on the keyboard, and we can change that to linear. And now when we play this animation, it pretty much runs smooth. Now, technically, you want to set your endpoint to 99 to have it perfect. Because otherwise you have one frame where it's at -360 and 100, or -360 and 0, which are the same. So, but it's 1 degree. You're probably not going to notice it too much. So now what we start doing is the fun stuff. We are going to add an object constraint, and we're going to copy rotation. Copy the rotation of the empty. So now, as we play that, the front wheel spins. Cool. Let's go ahead and do the same for this. Copy rotation to the empty. And you'll notice both wheels are spinning together in conjunction. Now, I could have set this wheel as a child of that, as an object, and then I can remove this. And this wheel will spin just fine. However, if I then duplicate this wheel and put it back here and play my animation, that wheel spins around in a giant circle, which looks pretty crazy and would never work. So that's why I don't want that. Now I need to get rid of that parent. And I thought it showed up in one of these, but I guess not. So we'll just select both and do Alt-P and clear parent. And then we need to copy rotation again to the empty. And now they're both working. Okay, so that's super. That's great. That's good. Everything's working well. We're going to call this rotation. We'll do empty underscore rot for rotation. And I'm going to go ahead and duplicate that and move it up so it runs in the center of this linking pin here, link shaft, whatever. And we're going to rename this empty lock underscore 1, because I'm going to have another one. Okay, now this needs to be a child of the first one. So let's go ahead and play this. Okay, it's moving, but it's doing some crazy spinning stuff. That's because when you duplicate it, it duplicates the animation. So I can clear that with Alt-I on the keyboard. And that deletes the keyframes. So now, this goes around, and it always points outward, which is fine. It runs in a perfect circle that point out, which again is fine. So we need to take this and have this copy the location of that. So let's go ahead and set up copy location and copy location of empty location 1. And beautiful. That works well. The two train wheels are linked together with this shaft that's connected to them. So as this one gets power and spins, it's also powering this wheel. So we have the traction between both rails, or between both wheels and the rail. That's great. Unfortunately, we're still not providing power to anything because this isn't being powered yet. So we needed to do some more magic. It's not magic, but it makes it sound mystical and confusing and keeps the peons in their place. We're going to do another copy location, and we're going to copy empty location 1. Now, as you notice, instantly that creates a huge problem because it pulls it all the way over. So we want to set up an offset. Alright, that's looking better. But we only want to be copying the X location, so the back and forth. We don't need to do the up and down. So let's take off Y and Z. And now, this is pumping back and forth, as it should, up in that cylinder thing. Goes to the front, pulls out to the back. It would stay linked with this, but it's not. So how do we change that? Well, we use another constraint, a track 2. Track 2, the target should be empty location 1. I have no idea what kind of craziness it just did there, but We can tweak it around by changing some of these negative X. Okay, so we want positive X. All right. All right, so this is looking pretty legit for a train wheel. You know, we got the train wheel there. We got this piston going in and out. But, you know what? Well, it's kind of hard to see just because of the lighting. But these two pistons can't really run inside of each other. So, I don't know why I did that. I wanted to escape. So we can do two things. We could just pull this out a little bit. Let me change to wireframe. We could just pull this out so it's there. But you'll notice it's still sitting here on this end. So that's a problem. So the other solution would be to link it on the opposite side of the wheel. In order to do that, we need to make a duplicate of empty location 1, Shift D to duplicate, and that is down 0.5, so we want to go down 0.1, or a total of 1, -1, and we want to go ahead and rename this to 2, and then we'll change this guy's track 2 to location 2, so now it's at the bottom half. So now as the wheel spins, I'm doing something crazy here. Oh, we also need to change the copy location. There we go, but now we have a huge problem. Our pistons are kind of, or not our pistons, these shafts are hitting each other. So that solution doesn't work. So let's go ahead and get rid of empty 2 and set these back to location 1. So how do we fix this? Well, let's try moving this empty over. And you'll notice it moves all of this stuff. So let's take a look at this. Why are we copying all these locations? All we need to do is copy the up and down, which is Z, and the back and forth, which is X. We do not need to copy Y. If we don't copy Y, whoops, I can select on my empty location, move it to wherever I want, and I'm not affecting this shaft. So let's go ahead and, whoops, hit the control key, not the menu key, and let's move this one as well. There we go. So now the two pins kind of match over the tops of each other, where a rod would stick through the center of them into the wheel to provide the power. Now, this isn't really enough of an overlap, and you would totally shear any pin in there. I don't care what kind of steel you're using, it would shear. The amount of torque and force pulling on that, it would never work. But, whatever. We're not worried about the physical realness of this to too much of an extent. However, there is a very real problem we're having here. And that is that our piston, yeah, it's kind of going all over the place in this box, which is a problem. Because it needs to be airtight for the steam in there to push this back and forth, which I think is pretty much how steam trains work. This is a bad example to try to get technical on because I don't know how they work. So what we're going to do is we're just going to select the end of this and pull it back to, say, this point here. And we'll notice, okay, we're still doing the same thing. We've got a problem now, though. That is our object center. So what we need to do is select this whole thing and select, this is the pivot point. So I'm actually going to set it in a little bit because we're pivoting on, and then I'm going to pull this back to there. So now we pivot on that, which is great, except now we need another piece. And you know, I'm just going to duplicate this and shove it in there and make that shorter. Okay, so now what? Well, that's not right. Let's get rid of this track 2 because we don't need to track 2 anything anymore. We still want to copy the location of that empty. And let's see, that piston runs inside and out of this box, which should be moved over some now. Alright, so that pumps in and out of there. This joint's on that. Now, of course, our joints shouldn't be running inside of each other, so we have two options. The first and easiest is just to move that back over, and that'll work fine. We'll have a pin there. The other option would be to keep them running at the same point, and put two pins or two linking pieces on the outside halves to make them connect. You could do that too. It depends on what you want the model to look like. But here we go. This pumps in and out of that. The wheels spin around. This stuff all pushes. Everything's working great. Now, this is a bunch of objects, each being its own object. And if you were to join all these objects together, this does all fail, because now you just have one big mesh. So then you have to go and set up hooks, which I might cover in another video if anybody's interested in hooks. But for anything you're doing for Minetest, for like exporting B3Ds and stuff, it can be multiple objects, as long as they're all selected and you have export selection, and it'll work. And like all this stuff, it'll actually, to my knowledge, it'll still work in Blender even though it's not set up with bones. We could have done the same thing with bones, and essentially what we would do, I'm just going to leave this playing because it looks so cool. Essentially what we would have done is, I don't know if this is going to do anything. Whoa, no, I do not want that. That really doesn't do it justice. You can't see it very well. Anyway, I just want to turn off the grid. Display. Let's get rid of that. We'll leave those. Get rid of this and that. There we go. So, if you were going to set it up with bones, you would set one bone for each wheel. A bone for this shaft, a bone for that shaft, a bone for this piston here. And they could all be one object then. And you would assign each mesh to that bone. And then you would still use the empties. You would still use the same constraints. But you would have them on the bones. And then the bones would move the connected meshes. So it would still work the exact same way, just a little different setup. Now the reason I use this as an example is because I actually did animation, which I don't think got used at all, but that's fine. It was a good learning experience for me because I had no idea how to rig something like this, and I kind of learned it. But the Advanced Trains mod, which, by the way, is pretty sweet looking. There were some train wheels that they wanted to get animated, and I kind of took a model somebody else made. I don't know why I said I kinda. That's exactly what I did. I took a model somebody else made, and kind of figured out this animation for it. I think I had to add a few things in and do little tweaks here and there, but yeah, it worked out really well. And you would just have this animation on there and have it running. You know, it may not have been the Advanced Trains mod. It was a Trains mod for Minetest though. But yeah, you'd have this running, and obviously you need to adjust the speed for the speed of the train so the rotation looks right and you don't have wheels spinning faster than it's moving or slower. But yeah, that's it. I don't think you can really just duplicate this. We can try it. Let's change this to wire, and let's stop the animation. Okay, let's get the light out of there. Take that and duplicate. Okay, let's see. Okay, yeah, so duplicating it, everything then works to the duplicated one. Obviously, on a train, you're going to have to flip everything around so that the shaft's running on the outside of the wheel, because obviously there's an axle on the center connecting the two. But yeah, that would work. Another way to do it would be to have this one copy the first location, and then just have everything run off of these two empties here. Because technically, your wheels are in perfect sync on both sides. So everything can be running off of those two empties, and you just use your offsets and pull them over so you have the space between it. And there you have your mighty steam train ready to pull your train car full of diamonds and coal and cobble and cobble and cobble and cobble and cobble. Did I mention cobble yet? Probably like 4 or 5 train cars full of cobble. Yeah, and like a pocket full of diamonds. That sounds about right for a mining trip. But hopefully this helps you guys out some. I know, like I said, it was kind of advanced, and it's kind of a niche kind of thing. Like, there's not a whole super lot that would use this exact method, but the concepts described herein are quite useful, and with adaptation could be used for pretty much anything else. We'll do one on rigging with bones for like an animal or something. I was actually gonna do that, but I didn't make my kangaroo yet, so I need to model a kangaroo first, which I might do a video on actually, and then do a second video for rigging it and animating that. But yeah, this is gonna wrap this video up. Like, the last 3 minutes have just been me talking and wasting your time, so I'll stop wasting your time and say signing out. See you next time.